Hello, all you fine feathered individuals. We back. It's League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys for, I guess we're calling it more recap for the group stage. It all came and went so quickly, we hardly had time to do any deep dives into the group stage.
My man, there has been so much going on at this World Championship, from the teams that are keeping the dream alive, going on into the top 8, the quarterfinals, talking about teams whose season has come to a close and the type of changes that might be possible, disappointments, excitement. Worlds brings it all.
We got your disappointments, we got your surprises in a good way, and we're going to go through an all-pro team for the group stage. But we start with something people love to talk about at Worlds. It's kind of fallen off the last couple of years because there hasn't been a prime recipient for the Dade Award. This year, it's glaringly obvious. We touched on what the most disappointing part of the group stage was. Of course, it was the performance of Fun plus Phoenix. You could really give a Dade Award to the entire team, I think, because Doing B was consensus top 3, number 1 on a lot of top 20 players lists. If you have to give it to one person, I hate to say it, but it's got to be him, right?
Absolutely. It's one of those ones where, look, you've watched, any of you have seen more than 5 minutes of League Unlock before. You know we love Doing B. We talk so much about the exciting things that he brings to League of Legends, how he changes things, what he's done in the LPL. You know, you want to talk about the Rogue Warriors back in the day? Well, you're not talking about them unless you're remembering about Doing B back there, talking about what he's done with FPX in the championship. All that is good, but it goes out the window when you're talking about this year's performance. And you're absolutely right. When you do look at FPX, you could give this award very deservingly to all 5 members equally on this team. But when you talk about expectations and the level of play that we were proven and given this year from Doing B, undoubtedly you have to look at what we got from him individually at this World Championship and what type of impact he could have had and what it meant for FPX. And yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, Doing B has to be the 2021 Dade Award winner.
You've got 2015 LGD, 2017 EDG, which were Pool 1, first seeds from the LPL, failing to even get out of the group stage. I know FPX wasn't the first seed from the LPL, but this is a bigger disappointment because of how big a tournament favorites overall they were. And it's not like they just got unlucky in a couple of games and didn't make it through. They looked bad in a lot of these losses, especially that final day where they went 0-4. You look at their stats overall from the tournament, they were 14th out of 16 teams in a lot of major categories. We're talking overall team kill death, gold differential at 15, and gold differential per minute. The only teams that were worse than them in these categories were DFM and Fnatic.
It's insane, my man, when you talk about the level of success, the level of dominance that we saw exerted from this lineup many times against elite competition in the LPL. And then to see it crumble the way that it did at this event, and to look at it over the course of it, okay, you know, you look at the first part of week 1 in the group stage, and to not get any traction or anything really going in that type of way or being impressed, and then to have, of course, the catastrophic 0-4 on the second half, unacceptable level of performance from any type of first seed, right? You'd be talking about in type of way.
We'd be blaming TSM for this.
Let alone a top 3 team at the event and an absolute World Championship contender looking in. Unbelievable to think that this is the way that it ended for FPX.
If 100 Thieves or TSM, whoever the top seed from NA, started 2-1 and then had an 0-4 drop off like this, we would be flaming them into oblivion. And FPX are way bigger favorites than they ever would have been. I guess now in hindsight, that finals loss to EDG should have been more of a warning, but so many, us included, kind of thought they've looked so good that it's almost not a big deal that they lost those finals. It seemed like a one-off, but it looked like it was foreshadowing more than anything else.
Yeah, and especially when you consider how things ended up for FPX at the World Championship, and you look back at that LPL finals, what was the big thing, the one major takeaway that we both had? We were concerned about Tien's performance. I don't think that Tien delivered the way that he is capable of and has in the past for FPX in that LPL final. And then we didn't see it at all at this World Championship. Talking about, we mentioned before, the champion pool was there. This isn't like it wasn't a mismatch for this type of player. It should have been a very strong performance coming through. And anything but that from FPX.
It is just wild for how dominant they looked. They were at the top of the global power rankings for not weeks, months. And they have nothing to show for it for this year. No LPL title, not even a top 8 finish at Worlds. We're just going to forget that this dominance even ever happened.
And that's the crazy thing, is to think, well, what's the next step for an FPX? You already made the adjustment heading into this year of switching out from, Khan to Nuggery and what, adding in that world championship to the roster. This is a whole roster of world champions, very good high level players. And people, like when you're looking at Doing B, where you're going, oh, Dade Award 2021. Well, what about everything else in 2021? How do you evaluate that and what you want to do? I think that this is obviously going to be one of the craziest things to follow into this offseason, because I predict that there's going to be some panic type of move made, given how disastrous and disappointing this result really is for FPX and how bad it looks and how embarrassing it is for the rest of the LPL.
I'm fully expecting this roster to look totally different when 2022 rolls around. And I think some of the players, because the horrible taste that this ending is going to leave, are going to want a change themselves. Let's go from the negatives to the positives of what we got out of the group stage. Talking biggest surprises in a good way. And you can start with NA's very own, because, Mark, this is only the second time in the history of Worlds since we've had, this format that started in 2014, where all 3 NA teams finish with 3 wins or more. So what I'm saying is, I know Team Liquid was close in the tiebreaker and 100 Thieves have some bad moments, but I feel like you're leaving this Worlds already not being disappointed like we have in years past with North America.
It's bittersweet chocolate right there is what we're getting, that little bit of a dessert. You're getting some chocolate. You're getting a little bit of that sugar hit. It's just not exactly as creamy and smooth as you want that chocolate.
But I'm not writing off chocolate forever. I feel like years past, you're like, I never want chocolate again.
That's a good point, because some people have had that reaction to the NA performances of, screw this, I'm not investing my time. Why do I care about this? I'm getting flamed by EU, LCK, LPL, minor regions, whatever. You look at this year's performance for North America, the way that the 3 teams mainly succeeded in that second half, that second week, those days of round robins. I think this absolutely has to be looked at as, not just 1, 2 steps forward for the LCS. And I understand, there might be some snickering laughs at going, you're getting 1 team out and a couple of 3 wins, and you're going, that's 2 steps for your region? Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's for the LCSs, and that's where we got to build up from. But you look at Cloud9, what they did, 100 Thieves and their victory over EDG, and TL getting that win over Gen G to force a tiebreaker in the first place. Those are so many opportunities where NA has faltered and failed time after time again. These 3 succeed where the others have failed.
Especially now when you look in hindsight that Gen G ends up beating Mad Lions in the next tiebreaker, it almost makes it easier to swallow as a Team Liquid fan that they lost to them, because Gen G ends up finishing first. That was maybe the one group where you thought NA could maybe get out of groups, and it'd be difficult because that was a very, obviously, 4-way tiebreaker, close group that we saw. So the fact that Cloud9 gets out of that group that absolutely no one in their right mind was expecting, 100 Thieves, let's get it straight, you would have been disappointed with them if they didn't get that upset win against EDG.
Yeah, that's a big swing for them in that type of regards. But when you do examine that performance, you do count it for all that it's worth. You're looking at NA's top seed taking down the top from the LPL, and the way that it went down, the way that they played, there's no reason to think that it couldn't happen again in a series, any type of situation. It's just one of those frustrations and unfortunate sides that you go, okay, but how come it has to happen once you've been eliminated? How come that performance and that level of concentration is unlocked once that pressure
you got to capture that mindset. They got to come into these groups like they're 0-3 already. That's the mindset.
And so that's where, when I look at a team like Team Liquid and I go, okay, you are getting those points. I have to give you, no matter what I feel about that tiebreaker game later, and we can talk about the history, obviously, about Team Liquid at 3-3 and not getting out of groups. Sure, all very valid, but you got to give those points and you got to give credit when these positive things happen, and that's where I'm looking at that Gen G tiebreaker victory for TL, because so many times we've come into a situation like that where NA can do it. They've got that shot, and they fail miserably in that regard. TL found a way to get done when it mattered there, so I got to give them points for that.
In case you haven't noticed how low the standard is for North America, one team getting out and we're like, pretty good year, LCS.
This is the limbo championships, my man. It is a low bar going on for the LCS.
The bar for the LCK is a whole lot higher, but we're still sitting here as one of the biggest surprises of the group stage for me is how damn good the LCK looked. All 4 teams getting through the quarterfinals. One tiebreaker between Hanwha and RNG away from all 4 teams picking up the first seed. They were 12-3 in week 2 across the board, and if you exclude Gen G, they were 9-1. It was the complete opposite of the LPL. Utter dominance from Korea so far.
And you don't need to hear me talk about Damwon and how spectacular they have been. Clean performance is phenomenal. T1 has looked up to that upper echelon as an elite team that can be considered one of the favorites to win the World Championship. Hanwha Life, the way that we've seen them, you've seen Chovy.
That's the biggest surprise is Hanwha.
Absolutely been a big surprise. You've seen Chovy have that form that you want to see from Chovy at an international event like this. The Church of Chovy, those followers are feeling pretty good, pretty happy. And even better, you're getting contributions from the bottom lane. Deft and Vista have been fantastic for Hanwha Life. Certainly a step up from what we've seen from them for the most of this year, as that duo have been better in that bottom lane. And then even Gen G. Yes, I know, we were talking about Gen G, a little bit different from the other 3 and what happened with Group D, but you still have to respect the power that players like BDD and Ruler are bringing to the table, because you give them any type of gold advantage, you give them any XP, these boys are taking it and running and making sure that they're piloting the Gen G winning train.
If I told you in July or before the playoffs kicked off in the LCK that I'm excited for Hanwha Life to finish top 8 at the World Championship, I would have gotten smacked upside the head.
It's crazy to think of the run of performance and increased, general progression that we have seen from this Hanwha Life team. And it's one of those ones where I think a lot of people could have seen this level of play, this level of strength from them at the beginning, the announcement of, hey, Def's joining Hanwha Life, everything else, let's see how it's going to work. But then we saw how it worked throughout the year, or more so how it didn't work throughout the year. And that, I think a lot of people sold off the idea of ever reaching this potential for Hanwha Life. They've reached it now, and they certainly are deserving of being in the top 8 of the World Championship.
And I know people are, oh man, you've got Hanwha versus T1, that friendly fire in the first matchup. T1 and Damwon are on the same side. Guys, half the teams in quarterfinals are the LCK. That's just how it's going to happen.
There wasn't a lot of wiggle room. I understand this is one of the examples that comes through, and it's undeniable to look at the history of the way that the draw system has worked for the World Championship, and realizing that a lot of times, even groups, we talk about groups of death, are unbalanced, and then you're taking from there the 1-2 seeding and then putting it into the ball simulator, and my God, of course you're going to end up with some unbalanced sides of the draft, and that's exactly what we got again. And yes, it's unavoidable. You got 4 LCK teams, 3 of them that we just talked about that you're extremely excited about, 2 obviously at the ultimate level. Yeah, of course it's going to work out that they're going to match up against each other.
And yes, having T1 and Damwon on one side maybe makes it a little stacked, but let's take a revisit to 2016 Rocks SKT in the semifinals there. It's not like this is the first time that this has happened in history. You almost get punished for being too damn good when you have that many good teams from a single region. Last thing to recap or touch on the group stage. It's always fun. We go back, we do the top 20 player list leading up to the event, but you always kind of have to redo them, revamp them. So we're going to start with an all-pro team performance from the group stage, all 5 positions, and some are a little bit more difficult to do than others. I think the easiest one to talk about is Mr. Swan Song himself. Khan in the top lane, no question, was the most dominant top laner from the group stage. I'll give a slight honorable mention to Kana, who was also fantastic for T1, but it's got to be Khan in the top lane.
Yeah, I think the only type of names that you could mention in this one is Kana, as you said. I think Ale could make a case for himself, what he was able to do, but overall, there is no way you're picking anybody but Khan. My man has stepped up and delivered. Yes, it might be the Swan Song, but finally, after years of talking about how great this guy is, Khan's fans are finally able to see it on the international stage. A performance, the way that he has been consistently so dominant for this Damn One team and reliable for them. How many times could when Khan was on FPX, I don't think we're talking about consistency and reliability at a dominant level. Oh my goodness. We said it. Koma's got the secret keys, man. He has got the secret touch to make sure that these players are playing at their highest level, and Khan absolutely at this event, a great example of it.
Graves, Jax, Jace, Lucian. That's all he's played. My man's going for damage. He's going to carry. He's going to dominate laning phase, get pentakills. He has been an absolute star on an already star-studded roster that is Dom 1 so far. In the jungle, it was a little more contested. Obviously, anytime you're doing something like this, you talk about Canyon because he's, been the best jungler in the world for a while. But this group stage, we're highlighting a rookie. You got to talk about Owner on T1, who might have been the best player on a fantastic roster and fantastic run that we saw in groups.
Yeah, I think when you mention names like Canyon, Tarzan, of course, people want to be talking about those star players, and they had pretty good, relatively good performances through that group stage. But again, the one jungler to me, there's only one that really stuck out at what type of difference he was making for his squad and the type of plays that he's putting out on the Rift. It was Owner. There was a lot of exciting highlight plays coming through from him. And again, the best is that you can see the communication is clear and controlled with T1, with him. What is going on, where he needs to be at the right time to help somebody out. You love to see that from the T1 boys, and Owner absolutely deserving of this all-pro jungler spot from the group stage.
As a rookie, last year we were talking about Kyria as a rookie in his Worlds debut, putting up such fantastic performances. This year it's Kyria on that roster and his buddy in the jungle, Owner, who has been fantastic. One of the key cogs in this change to T1 being dominant again when it was going back and forth. You had Element, Cuz, and finally people were saying, when's Owner going to get a chance to play? And I mean, since he's been the staple starting jungler for them, they have not looked back, and there's no reason to, because he's been that damn good. Mid lane, obviously, you have Chovy at the top of pretty much every major laning statistical category, as we're accustomed to seeing, as we thought we would see at Worlds. But you can't give it to him. You got to give it to Showmaker, the man who had, a 60 KDA at one point. He was so dominant for Dom 1, and a lot of the criticism, yes, Chovy can dominate in lane, and maybe it doesn't transition. Showmaker's always transitioning into the mid to late game.
There is no doubt about it. There has not been a player that has individually changed the course of any games any more than Showmaker has at this event, and you can just see it from as soon as he's running out of base. The intimidation, the aggression, the confidence that this man is playing with. Incredible, man. We have not seen this type of performance for such a long time at this high elite category of a level that he plays at. It's incredible the way that he went through this group stage, the type of impact that he can have for Damn One, and the type of effect that he exerts out into the group, right? This presence of Showmaker on Damn One, and how good he is and how much he's going to punish your team. There's no better example of it than looking at when Cloud9 had control of their destiny to beat Damn One, secure that spot, and he busts out the Kassadin, and he is turning around 1v4s.
And that's one of my favorite games to highlight, is because I love, one of my favorite things in this game is when you have full teams throwing multiple 4 bans at a guy, then first picking away another pick in the TF, and then he gets put on, something you're not seeing that often, and dominates on it. That really speaks to how a world-class player can be when they have a champion pool that deep.
It's one of those ones where you look at everybody else and, again, everybody that's going to be on this all-pro list performed fantastic and was great, and you have some intimidation, but nobody brings it to the level that Showmaker does, and you just have this sense. I think you talk about any other mid laner at this event stacking up against Showmaker, well, outside of probably, 2 or 3, you're thinking, oh my goodness, what a disaster this lane is going to turn
be
into.
A gap, yeah.
Because Showmaker's going to completely take over.
Bot laners now, it's a tricky one. I really want to highlight Hansama, because even though they didn't get out of groups, you saw time and time again, even in the games Rogue was losing, he was playing at another level. He's going to get a contract with G2 because of it. That's how damn good he looked. But we're still giving the nod over to Ruler on Gen G, how important he was, especially on week 2. Have you ever seen someone almost claw his team to a victory like that LNG game that was a complete disaster? Ruler lived up to the hype for Gen G in the group stage.
The big thing for me with Ruler that separated him from every other ADC is we saw a couple of good plays. We saw some nifty ways to get around and get the damage in on some team fights. But absolutely, the difference to me with Ruler is just the way that he gets his advantages, and then the power that you feel when Ruler is walking around the map. No matter where you are, you're in top lane. You're thinking in the back of your mind, I need to know where this guy is. I don't care about anybody else, and that's BDD, Clid, a lot of strong members on this Gen G team, and you're just going, I'm worried about Ruler. That's who I'm scared about, because this man, once he's carrying around some damage, he's going to make sure that he's going to be using it, and you better make sure that your health bar is enough to stand up.
Everyone knows he's the featured guy on Gen G, and he still gets it done, even with that much attention and focus from the other squads. Finally, support. This is the trickiest one to do. I don't feel like there were any complete standout star performers. Beryl is playing back to standard. He played 6 different champions in 6 games. Vista was stellar for Hanwha Life. Kaiser had some great engages to keep Mad Lions alive, but we went with Kyria for T1. I know he played 3 Lulu games, so that might count as a negative to be playing those, but Kyria was Mr. Consistent. Him and Gumiyoshi, another guy we could acknowledge, were absolutely dominant in the bot lane.
You can take away all the points you want for playing a Lulu. You look at the results of that Lulu, that effect that Lulu had in the game. Absolutely, I'm giving him that one. You're right. This is one of those ones where you look at the type of impact that Kyria has and how good he's been, and you say, sure, it's nothing that's blowing me away the same way we talked about with Showmaker, Khan, even Ruler, and what we've seen from them. But it absolutely is one where you look at everybody else, and I think the one that does stand out to me is Kyria, and the role that he has played and how he has engaged, I think, at times for T1 and the type of calls that he's had to make as a rookie, as a very young and inexperienced player. That's what I was going for, and that is someone who certainly does deserve this type of recognition.
Probably been the most consistent player on T1 when you look at the full calendar year was Kyria in that bot lane. Group stage is behind us. Next on the docket is the quarterfinals and knockouts. We'll be doing a full deep dive preview of all those matchups, but that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. Thanks for hanging. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.